2,600 years ago, there was a prophecy concerning the last 7 years of this age. It's written in the book of Daniel, and we're going to take a look, so stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to Digging for End Time Truths. I am Mark Rishik, your host, and we are going to do a short teaching on the last 4 verses of Daniel chapter 9, which are the 70 weeks. They are 70 weeks of years, or 77-year periods that were determined upon the nation of Israel that brings them from the time it was given until the return of Jesus Christ. So, we're going to kind of jump right in. The 70 weeks are broken into 3 different blocks. There is a 7-week period, there is a 62-week period, and then there is a 1-week period. What we're going to see is the 7-week period has already happened. The 62 weeks have already happened. And then there was a stop in time, and there is 1 week left. And there is a clear event that marks the beginning of that last week. And that last week is what is covered in detail in the book of Revelation. And the reason why I'm really doing this teaching now is we are about to jump into our 4th teaching on the book of Revelation, which is going to get us into the 4th chapter, which is going to really kick off this last 7-year period that is going to come upon the whole earth. So we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to start. I'm going to read right through the verses. It's found in Daniel chapter 9. This was 2,600 years ago this was written. So God knows what he's doing. Written by the prophet Daniel, and I'm going to read from Daniel chapter 9. We're going to read from verse 24 right through verse 27. And here we go. Verse 24 says, now, just so we know, Daniel was in prayer. He saw the destruction of his nation because of ungodly living and not following the laws of God. That's pretty pertinent to what we're living today. But he understood by reading the scriptures that the desolation that had come upon his nation was about to end and they were going to be restored. So he set himself to prayer, and he after praying, the angel Gabriel comes to him, and this is what he was told. And it starts in chapter 9, verse 24. So Gabriel says to Daniel, he says, 70 weeks, this is verse 24, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Verse 26, and after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. Verse 27, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. So those are the 4 verses. So now we're going to break it down a little bit. So here we see in verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon your people, which is clearly Israel, and your holy city, which is clearly Jerusalem. A quick note, people thought this was madness before 1948, but Israel was restored as a nation in 1948. They also thought it was madness that they would get Jerusalem as their capital, but that in 1967 war they had recaptured Jerusalem. So this has already happened. 70 weeks to finish transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make so he goes through everything in this verse that this whole 70 weeks is going to accomplish. And we can clearly see that some of these things have not happened yet. To finish the transgression, Israel's still not walking with God, so that hasn't happened. To make an end of sins, that has not happened. To make reconciliation for iniquity, well, there has reconciliation been made, but they haven't received it. To bring in everlasting righteousness, that has not happened. And to seal up vision and prophecy. In other words, all the vision and prophecies of the Old Testament prophets will be fulfilled just as Jesus said, and there are some that have not. And to anoint the most holy, that means Jesus, just like Mary was told by the angel that Jesus will rule on David's throne in Jerusalem, that has not yet happened. And this is what is going to be the end of this prophecy. So let's move on to verse 25, because now it starts to get good. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So this is one of the most amazing prophecies in the Bible, in my estimation. The decree was given, the decree was given to rebuild Jerusalem. It was by one of the nations that had Israel captive. They gave them the okay to do it, and from that date until Jesus came and until Messiah the Prince, there was 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So that time frame has already happened, and it happened to the T. So when did Jesus come as the Prince? He came in on a donkey. And in fact, it's the only time he kind of pre-staged something. He told his disciples, go to the town over there and you'll find a donkey tied up, a young colt that has not been sat on. Go and take it, and if the owner asks, this is what Jesus told the disciples, tell him that the master has need of it. And that's exactly what happened. They got the donkey. He walked in, and what happened when he came riding in on the donkey into Jerusalem? They started to throw palms down. This is what we call Palm Sunday. They threw palms down. They said, "Hail to the King," and they proclaimed him king. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, they said. And in fact, the Pharisees of that day rebuked Jesus and his disciples, and they said, tell them to stop saying this, because tell them to stop calling you king. And he said, if they stop, even the rocks will cry out. In other words, this day has been so determined and laid out by God that you're not going to stop it. Nobody's going to stop it. And if the people don't say it, the rocks will say it. So that has happened. So that was 69 of the 70 weeks have already happened. So then what does it say? So let's go back to verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, notice he calls Jesus the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The streets shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. That's exactly what happened. And after the 62 weeks, in other words, he's referencing the 3 breaks. There's a 7, there's a 62, and then there's a 1. So he's saying after the 62 break, after the 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off, but not for himself. That is clearly what happened. Jesus was cut off, actually means in the original language, killed. So Jesus was killed, but not for himself. Clearly referenced in verse 26. And the people of the prince, so here's where it gets good. And the people of the prince who is to come, the prince who is to come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So what they reference here is this prince that is to come. This is the world ruler that is going to supposedly come and make peace with the whole world and fix all these problems that we're now dealing with. And it references where he comes from. So let's take note here. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So who destroyed the city and the sanctuary? It was the Romans and the Roman legion that destroyed the city and the sanctuary. So this prince that is to come, these are his people. So he's coming from somewhere inside that Roman Empire that was before. And the end of it, which is Israel, shall be with a flood. And until the end, war and desolations are determined. That's been happening for years. So now, let's go to verse 27, because this is where it gets good. Now he references the last week. So why is there a break between the first 69 and the last? Very clearly, number one, after the sanctuary was destroyed in 70 AD, there was no Israel. And you could not fulfill this without Israel being a nation again. So once the nation comes back, which it now is, and once Jerusalem comes back, which it now has, it says in verse 27, then he, this prince that is to come, this world ruler, will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So there's your 1 week. So what's going to set off this week? What's going to start this last clock ticking for 7 years? It's going to be a covenant that is confirmed for 1 week. Some call it the peace treaty. Some call it, the actual language reads, he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And then it says, but in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. So here's where we are. Once this week starts, which is not started yet, but man, we're getting close. You're going to have a temple in Jerusalem, which is not built yet. But believe me, you can do your research. The Jews have already got all of the artifacts that they need. They need a red heifer, and they already have them. They need all of the priestly articles so that they can do all these sacrifices, and they're planning on setting this up. All they need is the temple built. Okay? So what this says is that this prince or ruler is going to make a covenant of peace with Israel, and apparently he's going to allow them to build this final temple. And then in the middle of the week, so we're going to see this if you jump into my book of Revelation teachings that's coming up. We're going to see that right in the middle of this 7-year period, this world ruler steps in and tells Israel they have to stop their sacrifice and offering, and he sets himself up as God in their temple, which Jesus references in Matthew 24 and calls it the abomination of desolation, where someone comes in to the Jewish temple and defiles it and calls themselves God. So this is what's going to happen in this last week of the 70 weeks. So let's read through verse 27 just to finish it up. Then he, this prince who is to come, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. He's going to decimate the temple. In fact, Jesus says in Matthew 24, he says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. He references this scripture right here, talking about the end and this Antichrist. So let's finish the verse. Even unto the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. In other words, Jesus will come back and this will be finalized. But this is the layout of the nation of Israel. It was laid out from 2,600 years ago. God said, here's your history. You want to know? Here's your history. You're going to have 70 weeks of years. And you're going to, there's going to be 3 different sections of it. And the Messiah is going to come, but you're going to reject him, and he's going to be killed, but not for himself. And then at that point, if you notice, if you're sharp and you pick this up, at the end of that 69th week, what happened? Jesus died, and this entire church was born. And the church age of Jesus giving everyone but Israel the opportunity to come into the kingdom has been now going on for 2,000 years. And we have gone through in the book of Revelation Jesus's message to the 7 churches. And then at the end of the 7 churches, or the church age, which is very close to coming to an end, this last week will happen, which is the bulk of the book of Revelation, about what happens in this final week of Daniel. The first 3.5 years seem somewhat okay, but the last 3.5 years is such decimation and desolation on the planet that you're not going to want to be here, and nobody that you know, friend or even foe, you're going to want them to be here on this planet to go through what's going to happen, because it's just going to be unbelievable. Jesus said there has never been a time like it, nor will there ever be a time like it. The tribulation that's going to happen during that 7-year period. So I wanted to get this out to you just so you're prepared, because we're about to go into the 4th part of the book of Revelation teaching. And I wanted you to be aware of what this last 7, the 70 weeks and this last 7 years that we're about to jump into is, because 69 of the 70 have already happened, and there's one 7-year period left, and the book of Revelation covers it. And we are about to jump in because we're about to hit part 4 of our teaching in the book of Revelations. I hope this has helped you, and look forward to seeing you on the next teaching. God bless, and see you soon.